Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the last week of April. We're already this far into the calendar year of 2021. I hope it's better than 2020 was at this point, because 2020 at this point kinda sucked ass. So we're talking movies. Today I'm going to talk about a movie that also features a TV show. Oddly enough, I really didn't start appreciating the movie until I saw the TV show. I talked about this movie in one of my actual videos when I first started this channel, when I ranked a bunch of movies, and I talked very shortly about a lot of them. But I decided, since that's how I talked about it, I can swing back around and talk about it again in this wider context. And that movie is the Coen brothers' Fargo. Honestly, I didn't care for this movie the first time I saw it. The second time I watched it, now I love this movie. This is a great movie. It was just something about me at the time. I just couldn't get into it. But then I decided, because it just looked good, to start watching the Fargo TV show, which now has 4 seasons. I understand I only have 3. The 4th one hasn't been released yet on any format I can own. I have watched it. I just don't have it. Alright, moving on. So, Fargo, it's actually very interesting between the movie and the TV shows because they are actually a connected universe. So this actually basically acts as the season 0 to the rest of the show. Its events do get referenced in the first season. It is part of the show's timeline, which is weird because the show's timeline is kinda janky at best. Because the first event out of all of this is actually the season I don't own, the new season, season 4, which takes place, I believe, in the 50s. That is the first event that happens in this chronologically series. It is very weird that that is where it starts, but that's where I'm going to start, with season 4. I'll probably put up a graphic. If I don't, I'm sorry. Because that is where this timeline begins. Basically, this season of the show, your main actors that you might have heard of, because there's a lot of good actors on in this season. I just didn't recognize a lot of them, but I definitely recognize Chris Rock and Jason Schwartzman, who play rival mob bosses. Basically, it talks about how in this particular northeastern state, I believe this one takes place in Michigan? It's Michigan or Minnesota. Because each movie takes place in a different northeastern state. Though I don't think any of them have taken place in Wisconsin, where I live, which is good or bad. I mean, who knows? We might end up getting the next season and have a really nasty crime spree happening. Bad shit happens in Wisconsin. So, anyways. Basically, the idea is in this town, there's always a ruling gang. And it's always basically like the Irish, the Jews, the Italians. But what happens is one gang has power, another gang moves in, there's a war for the power, that always inevitably starts with them trading children, so they won't go to war. So you trade your youngest child for their youngest child, and that's supposed to keep you from going to war. But inevitably it ends in war, and there's a new boss in town. This season takes a look at the Italians, led by Jason Schwartzman, and the African Americans, led by Chris Rock. And they're trying to not go to war, like every other time. They're trying not to go to war. They do the youngest child swap, and that's the objective. You also have one character who is actually Jewish, who stabbed his family in the back, because in his lifetime, he was actually traded twice. Even though he was only the youngest child the first time, he was also traded the second time. And he is the reason for both downfalls of the original gang and his own families, because he used his connection to gain entrance, or give entrance, into a club that allowed a giant bloodbath to occur. So he's also a character in this, who is just trying to kind of break this cycle of trading the children and creating trauma in these children's lives. It is still based on the works of the Coen brothers, so some weird crap happens. Like, some characters are taken care of, including the one I just mentioned, by a tornado. Random tornado, it just happens. Which, I mean, in A Serious Man, you know, it ends with the tornado coming and you're not knowing what happens, so it's kind of a reference to that. But you actually get to see what the tornado does. And it's really funny because they actually set it up like, I was sitting there watching that episode and going, it's the freaking Wizard of Oz! The entire episode is black and white until the tornado hits, then it's color. It's actually a really clever idea. But yeah, it's about how these two gangs are sniping at each other. For the Italians, it's about family because it's, you know, that is a family business. The mafia in Italy was always a family business. And in America, it was the same way. So it's about brothers arguing with each other. Their father has just died because a nurse euthanized him without anyone's knowledge. She killed him. And that becomes, you know, a thread because the Jason Schwartzman ends up in a relationship with her, not knowing what she has done. And that later on. You know, it's not my favorite season of the show itself. That is still definitely season 1. I really liked season 1. But it's still a pretty good season. It's still very well done. It still keeps up with the flow of what Fargo is. The next part of our timeline is actually season 2. This one takes place in the 70s. I'm pretty sure I've got this timeline correct, because the movie takes place in the 80s, I believe. So it is the 70s. We are in a small town, and we're in this small town actually for 2 seasons straight. It might actually be Bemidji, the same one from the movie. 1979, South Dakota Waffle Hut. So it takes place in South Dakota. Basically, this is one of the few seasons where there's actually, Fargo is more important than it is in everything else, because Fargo is just, like, season 4, we're calling in someone from Fargo. They have a connection in Fargo. That's how Fargo connects in. This one, it is actually, it is primarily about the group from Fargo, a syndicate, basically corporate crime, trying to push out a small Dakota family who runs their own family-based crime empire. You know, they have the farmhouse. They look very family-friendly, but in reality, they are, you know, criminal. They're doing criminal activities. You also have a woman and her husband who are caught up into this because the youngest Gearhart, that is the family who is trying to be ran out of North Dakota, or South Dakota, that is their name. The youngest Gearhart was hit by the wife, played by Kristen Dunst, after he committed a massacre at a Waffle House. And then you have Ted Danson and Patrick Wilson play a pair of cops who are attempting to figure all of this out. They have the Waffle Hut shooting, they're trying to figure out who shot him, why, and everything else that's going on. And once it's realized of what the wife has done, once Kristen Dunst has murdered the youngest son of this crime family, keeping them safe from being murdered by the crime family. It's a really fun show. Joaquin Woodman, man, I just want to say his name right, but I'm pretty sure I did. Joaquin Woodman plays one of the syndicate gangsters. He's really good. He's got some great pieces of dialogue. And that's the running thread from season 4 is actually to season 2, because he is, you find out in season 4, he is actually the son that was traded during the mob trades that happened in that season. He is actually the son that was traded, which took me all of 30 seconds to figure out. But it was still really cool that they did that, they made that connection. So now when you rewatch it, you get to see him as the adult version of him, of that character, and you get to see that even though in the season 4 he was tried to be kept away from the gangster life, from the evils that it creates, he still ended up right there. So it's a very interesting piece. of this season that you don't know right away, because again, this is a disjointed, pulled out of order story. But it is nice. It is nice to have those kind of connections. But basically, that's what it is. You have the Syndicate. It's that old versus new kind of thing. You know, is it this new type of criminal activity where you have basically a board of directors running it, or is it the old family crime group? Which is better? Which is going to rule? And everyone else who's caught in the middle. Because anytime two rival factions go to war, someone's always caught in the middle. I like Season 2. It actually grows on me the more I watch it. Every time I watch Season 2, I just like it more and more. Because I almost lost it. Because it is an enjoyable season. It's well done. And it is. It's definitely one I like. And I'm not going to tell you to check it out, because I'm going to tell you to check out all of Fargo at the end of this. So after that, the next piece of the timeline is actually the Coen Brothers movie, Fargo! Right? Why on earth would the actual movie come in third with the TV show? But it does, and we are now in, and this is the story, you know, this is the one everybody knows about. William H. Macy plays a car salesman who owes a lot of money from shady deals he's been doing. So he meets up with a pair of gangsters played by Steve Buscemi. And I'm not going to say his name, Peter Straumauer. I butchered his name, I'm sorry, Peter. He meets up with them in Fargo, only reference to Fargo. This one, it's the Syndicate, so again, it's the biggest reference. Meets up with them in Fargo, gives them a car, and tells them to kidnap his wife so he can ransom her to her father for a shit ton of money and stay clean himself. They go and do this, but unfortunately it ends with a cop being killed and two other motorists dying in their escape outside of Bemidji. This is where we meet Frances McDermott, who is the Bemidji chief of police, and she is investigating these murders on the road. While that is going on, William H. Macy is still very, trying to work out his end of this scheme, while the two crooks go to a remote cabin with the wife and hold her hostage. It's a great film. It has some great moments, great backstabbing. Obviously, this is the first chronologically, because the movie came out first, but it's the third in the timeline. So there's all this other stuff that now, dear God, this keeps happening. This weird course of events keeps happening, and this is just another piece of it, because it will play out into the first season, although they don't really make a lot of references to it in the fourth or second season. I think mainly just because this is such an enclosed idea, and they're all pretty enclosed ideas, where you might only get one little thing, like the connection between Season 4 and Season 2 is the one character. And actually, that's kind of the connection from Season 1 to Season 3 as well, is one character. So you get one person or one object or one thing that connects it, but because that's connected, it means everything's connected. Which is actually really cool. Actually, I'm sorry, Season 2 is connected also to Season 1 through one character who is younger in Season 2 and older in Season 1, but we'll get there. Fargo, it's a great movie. It's a classic. It is my favorite Coen Brothers film. It is. It's really fun. So that brings us into the timeline to the first season of the show, with Martin Freeman and Billy Bob Thornton doing tremendous, awesome things. Just amazing acting from these two people. It is worth watching this season just for them, but everyone is so top-notch in this season. Basically, Billy Bob Thornton is a hitman who works for Fargo! No, he doesn't work for Fargo. He works for another company. Fargo tries to kill him later on. That's the connection to Fargo. Billy Bob Thornton is basically he's a hired goon. He will murder people. He'll sabotage. He'll do whatever he wants. He is driving towards, I can't remember what town. Minnesota. No. So it's still a Minnesotan town. I want to say it's still Bemidji, but I don't think it is. It's somewhere in that area, but it's still Minnesota. He's driving through it. He ends up hitting a deer and has to bail out of his car because it's junked. The cops find the person he was hauling in his car. He just had a dude in his underwear in his trunk who has frozen to death because the trunk popped open and the dude escaped. And they're trying to figure it out. Billy Bob Thornton hit his head, went to the hospital. Martin Freeman plays a kind of mousy, down on his luck, least popular, not popular with his wife, not popular at work. He's just there. Kind of nothing good happens to him kind of guy, who runs into his old high school bully and ends up getting his nose broken. Not because the bully hits him, because the bully fakes him out, and he ends up smashing his face into a door, breaking his nose. At the hospital, he meets Billy Bob Thornton, and he begins talking about his bully named Sam Hess, and how much he does not like him and wants him out of the way. And while they're talking, it's very clear that Billy Bob is believing this is opportunity. Sam Hess is killed by Billy Bob Thornton while he's having sex with a stripper. And this brings in our police presence into this season. We're now trying to figure out who killed her. At the same time, Martin Freeman, because now Sam Hess is dead, has gained some balls and stands up to his wife by hitting her over the head with a hammer. Right after he does that, the chief of police shows up to question him because of his altercation with Sam Hess the day before. Obviously, he can't hide the fact that his wife is lying dead in his basement. He calls Billy Bob to help clean it up. He arrives, takes a gun filled with bird snake shot, and shoots the chief of police at point blank. So now the crime scene is 2 dead bodies and Martin Freeman laying unconscious because he knocked himself out to create the illusion. Billy Bob then flees to a different state to work for Oliver Platt, who runs a grocery chain. This is what connects it to the first movie, because in that movie there's a briefcase full of money that's buried in the snow, and you find out Oliver Platt is the person who found that money, because everyone who knew about it was dead. And that's how he opened this chain of stores. So that is the connection point between season 1 and the movie. Anyways, he ends up, most of Billy Bob from then until towards the end of the season is just him screwing with this grocery store guy, helping him but also helping himself by making the ransom that's going on in his life more real and actually trying to swindle him himself. While Martin Freeman is dealing with the fact that he actually killed his wife, he knows exactly who killed the sheriff. He's got a piece of buckshot in his hand, which is now getting infected. And he has to deal with all of that back in the Minnesotan town. It is a great season. It definitely kicked off to a great show. I love this season. It's a great show, but this is really what makes it hit my top TV show list, which is another list you can go back in the archives and check out. It is a great season. Like I said, the main cop, the Patrick Wilson character from Season 2, is played as an older version in Season 1. So that is also a connection to the other seasons as well. That brings us to the final piece of this timeline, which is Fargo Season 3. Season 3 takes place more present than Season 2. Season 2 is the early 2000s. This is more late 2000s. It's an interesting one. Oh yeah, Fargo in this one. Fargo is a syndicate. Sam Hess ran trucks for Fargo. So when Sam Hess is killed, 2 agents, 1 mute, 1 deaf mute, and 1 who can talk, played by Adam Goldberg, are dispatched. They are actually both shown as children in Season 2, which is cool, and the deaf-mute character comes back in Season 3, so that's that thread for those seasons. But anyways, that's how Fargo connects there. Season 3 has no connection to Fargo, except I think maybe it takes place in Fargo. You have a pair of twin brothers, both played by Ewan McGregor. Their father has died. He left one a stamp collection and the other a car. The one who got the car actually swindled his brother out of the stamp collection because the stamp collection would be worth more in the long run. Because there were more stamps, you could sell them off individually, make a lot more money than the one car. This has caused a lot of tension and turmoil between the brothers. Mary Elizabeth Weinstein plays the brother who got the car, His girlfriend, they want to get married, they need money. He has none, because he's a parole officer. So he goes to his brother, he says no. They decide to steal the last stamp he has so that he can sell it and make money. He hires one of his parolees to do the job, but the parolee loses the address, looks up the name, finds someone in a nearby town, and murders them, but finds nothing of value in the house. This turns out to be the stepfather of one of the police officers of that town, who then goes on an investigation, not only to figure out who killed her stepfather, but also to figure out his past, because you find out he was a science fiction writer who went to Hollywood, and it's a very interesting episode that covers that. While this is going on, the other Stussy brother, that is their names, they are the Stussy brothers, who had the stamp, he runs a parking lot empire. That's right! He made all of his money from parking lots. He is, he is met by a man who invested in them a year before and now wants to use them for his own shady dealings, which is a great performance. The actor's name is seriously not in my head. I wish it was, though, and it's not written on the back either, which is awful, because he's a really good actor, and I can't think of his name. But he finds out that is actually a shady kind of company that they took the money from, and they are now moving in on to Stussy's business. So he's got his brother on one side, he's got this criminal empire on the other side, and he's trying to deal with both, and failing at dealing with either. This is a good season. I really like this season. Ewan McGregor, Mary Elizabeth Weinstein, everyone gives tremendous performances in it, and it's definitely worth checking out. Again, this has been an overview of the timeline of the show Fargo. This is the whole story of it. You've got 5 things you can watch, 4 TV seasons, and 1 movie. It is great. It's great how they make these things interconnected, how they make references from one season to the movie or to each other, and just the fact that they've made them one big timeline. You don't see that a lot when you got a TV show based on a movie. Most of the time, they just say the movie was its own thing, and we're making our own, especially in an age where you have, Lethal Weapon was a TV show that aired during this time period. You had TV shows based on Hannibal. You had TV shows, based on From Dusk Till Dawn. All these TV shows that were based on movies that didn't have the movie as part of its chronological. Wasn't part of it. And then you have Fargo, which went, no, the movie's going to be part of it, because we're going to make references to it, and we want to have that same feel, and the best way is just to be a part of it. So if you've never watched the movie or checked out any of the seasons of the show, definitely do it. Give it the time it deserves to get into it, so you can actually enjoy it. Each season is not equal to each other. There are good seasons, there are bad seasons, but that's like any other TV show, especially the ones that are built around a single story for each season, and you don't have a lot of continuative narrative as the seasons progress. So definitely check out Fargo. It is a great show. That's what I'm talking about this week. So, that brings us to the end of April, and we are now heading into May. So, next month, I've talked about my affinity for pro wrestling. I've talked about wrestlers in film. I've talked about a singular wrestling pay-per-view for an entire month and its various incarnations. But next month, I'm doing something that fits this channel way more snugly. And next month, I will be doing an entire month talking only about WWE Studios. That's right, we're talking The Condemned. We're talking See No Evil. We're talking 12 Rounds. And we're talking about their sequels. And we're talking about some other films. So come back next week to hear me talk some WWE Studios films. Because let me tell you, for every good movie, there's probably a lot of shit. So, stop back next week. Don't forget to hit like, comment if you got something to say, subscribe to make sure you don't miss those WWE Studio reviews next month. And I will see you next week when we talk about The Condemned and The Condemned 2. I don't know why they made a sequel, but they did. See you next time.